Hey guys, it's great to be with you once again as we continue on in this series called Through Their Eyes. Super excited about our teaching today, but I don't want to jump ahead too quick because we're here to worship God through a couple different elements here, such as singing, watching a video, and introducing you to another character this week. And I think you'll really be intrigued, to say the least. So I'm excited about that. But before we get into that, let's just take a minute and let's just prepare our hearts as always. Let's be present. Let's try to clear the clutter, declutter our minds so that we can spend some time together worshiping God, bringing Him His glory and exalting Him. And so let's do that and begin to do that right now and encounter our living God.
Before the real joy comes, there's sorrow in the night. We know something good is around the corner. The morning is coming. But now we wait in the shadows. One last night, tossing, turning, waking. It's coming. It's so close. But in the early hours, the dark hours, it is so far away. Still, there's the flutter of anticipation, keeping us on the edge of our seats. Even in the dark, we know what's coming. Even in the silence, our giggles of anticipation break through. There's a gift waiting, wrapped specially, picked with us in mind, cosmic in its breadth, heavenly in its scope. Through hundreds of dark nights, through long frozen winters of life, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting, praying and praying, knowing the gift is coming, that He's coming. And then, before morning has even dawned, under marvelous starry light, accompanied by thunderous angels' wings and stately resonance of trumpets, finally, morning is here. It's time to unwrap God's greatest gift to us all.
Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. Peace on earth and mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies, with angelic hosts proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. Hark the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King. By highest heaven adored, Christ the everlasting Lord. Late in time, behold Him come, offspring of the Virgin's womb. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see, hail incarnate deity, pleases men with men to dwell. Jesus,
My life was hidden and isolated. I had no one. But then I heard about a man who could help me. He could set me free from the darkness of the evil inside of me. How could I not try? With one command from his mouth, I was set free from that darkness. I wanted to stay with Jesus, but he told me to go tell others. Good luck keeping me quiet. The joy that I had could not be kept to myself. I had to tell everyone.
Again, we started this new series last week called Through Their Eyes. And in each week, we are going through our Advent season, which, if you remember, Advent season means we look back, we look in the present, and we also look in the future. We look back. Now, if we were living before the cross or before Jesus, living then, as we look back, they were looking forward for the first coming of Jesus. And then they were living in, some of them were living in the present with Jesus. And now, like with us, we are living in we're not living in the, we're looking back, kind of remembering, but we're in the present of looking, of now, but we're also looking forward to when Christ's second coming is. So that's what Advent does. We look back, we look in the present, and we also look in the future. And we're looking at this through the eyes of some different characters that met Jesus, that met God. Last week we looked at Zechariah and we focused in on hope and how him and Elizabeth had their hope had been shattered many times because they were barren and could have no kids. And we talked about that, and we talked about losing hope and then our hope being restored, his hope being restored when God showed up and said, Zechariah, God has heard your prayers. You are going to have a son. And so hope was restored through that. And we recognize and we look and we realize that true hope is found in God. It's not circumstantial, but the source of hope is through a person, through the person of Jesus Christ. It's not circumstantial. It's not based on events or happiness, but it's based again upon who Jesus is, the changeless person of who Jesus is. And today we're going to continue on and we're going to look at a character that experienced Jesus, that encountered Jesus in the present after his birth. And it brought incredible joy. As he interacted with Jesus, it brought amazing and incredible joy. So let's jump into it. And this is going to throw you for a loop, but I want you to stick with me because this is a very powerful story, okay? And this is one you think, gee, I never thought we would talk about the demon-possessed guy around Christmas time. And you're right, we probably wouldn't, but we're getting creative with this whole Advent series. And again, our topic is joy. So I think, just a spoiler alert, I think you can quickly deduce that once this guy was delivered from demons, are you telling me he didn't experience incredible joy? And that's what we truly see. And that's what we see when we encounter Jesus in a very powerful way. So let's look at this story together. If you want to turn with me to Luke chapter 11, I believe it's 11, verses 1 through 20, we're going to take a look at this story, okay? So it says, they came to the other side of the sea, starting in verse 5 actually, they came to the other side of the sea to the region of Gerasenes, and chapter 5. Chapter 5, verses 1 through 20. There we go. Now I got it. Okay? Luke chapter 5, Mark chapter 5. I'm all over the board. Might as well start over. Mark chapter 5. I got it this time. I got it. It's bringing me great joy that I've got it. Okay? I have hope. You have hope. And we've got joy. So we're living it out together right now. So Mark chapter 5. And we're going to look at verses 1 through 20. So if you want to, you can follow along or you can just listen as I read it. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of Gerasenes. And as soon as he got out, meaning Jesus, as soon as he got out of the boat, a man with an unclean spirit, which interprets unclean, meaning demonic, he had demons within him, came out of the tombs and met him. He lived in the tombs, and no one else was able to restrain him, not even with a chain, because he often had been bound with shackles and chains, but had torn the chains apart and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran down and knelt before him. And he cried out with a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you before God, don't torment me." For he had told him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." "What is your name?" he asked him. Jesus asked him. "My name is Legion," he answered him, "because we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. A large herd of pigs were there feeding on the hillside, and the demons begged him, "Send us to the pigs so that we may enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned there. The men who tended them ran off and reported it into the town and the countryside, and people went to see what happened. They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon-possessed sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs. Then they began to beg Jesus to leave their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him earnestly that he might remain with him. Jesus did not let him, but told him, "Go home to your own people and report to them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So he went out and he began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and they were all amazed. What a powerful story. What a crazy story. What a powerful story. So you have this guy that he lived in the tombs. He was demon-possessed. He lived in the tombs, which would have made him even more unclean because they weren't allowed to go around anything dead. That was part of the Judaism, part of the law. They weren't allowed to go around things that were unclean, and certainly tombs would have been unclean. But that's where he lived because that's where the demons found their comfort, right? The demons that possessed him found their comfort. And it said that he would walk around gashing himself, cutting himself, and yelling, literally screaming. Some translations have him just screaming. Some have him as he encountered Jesus, he just ran down and was screaming at him, like just going after him, right? But what's really interesting is the demons even knew, as James tells us, the demons believe in God and they shudder. But the demons even knew the presence of Jesus. And perhaps that's what, he comes down and the guy's out of his right mind. He's definitely demon-possessed. It's really not him doing this. It reminds me of one of the movies in Lord of the Rings where the king was possessed. If you haven't seen that scene, it's an incredible scene. I think it's in the second one. But nevertheless, he comes running down and they begin begging for, what do you want with us, Jesus? Because they knew they were standing in the presence. In fact, they even recognized Jesus for who he was. They knew he was God, and they began to beg for him not to torment them. Is it really our time? Right? And so Jesus asked their name, and he said Legion, which indicates there was many of them. And again, he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. And then they plead, "Hey, put us in this herd of pigs," which is another interesting thing. Why were there pigs there? Because pigs would have been very unclean, and they weren't allowed to eat pigs. Pork is a major taboo, even to today. And so Jesus kind of honors the request, and he puts the spirits into the pigs. Then 2,000 pigs, they go over the cliff, and they go into the ocean, they drown. And then the people hear about it, the townspeople hear about it, and they become not happy, but they become afraid. Why did they become afraid? They were afraid, they come in, and then they beg Jesus to leave the region. And then the guy who now had his right mind, and the people see this guy, now he's dressed properly. By the way, remember it said that no one could subdue him, no one could keep him restrained. He would break handcuffs, he would break the shackles, he would destroy the chains. That was from the power of the demons living inside of him. This guy was completely out of his right mind. This guy was so out of his mind. Being controlled by these demonic spirits, or this demonic spirit living inside of him. The townspeople would have been extremely afraid of him because that's what he just ran around the tombs, just again yelling and screaming, just being tormented, right? Just crazy, out of his mind. Nevertheless, he recognizes who Jesus. Jesus cast the demons out of him, and he begs Jesus, "Hey, can I go with you?" And Jesus says, no, I want you to basically go and tell your life story. And the man did. Can you imagine this? I mean, it's just a crazy story, just a crazy story. But here's the question to me. I don't know how this man ever became demon-possessed. I mean, was it partly due to him? Was it partly, so my question is this, what do we invite into our houses? What do we invite into our homes? And when I say houses and homes, what I mean is this, what do we let into our hearts? And that's what I want us to think about. What do we let into our hearts? And as we look at this story, because what we let into our hearts is either going to bring us incredible hope and joy because we're in the presence of Jesus, or we're bringing things into our lives that is not of Jesus. They're not taking us closer to Jesus, but in fact, they're taking us in an opposite direction. Whatever it may be, whatever vice, addiction, whatever relationship, whatever it could be, where this other thing is not bringing us more into the presence of Jesus. It's not helping us become more like Jesus. It's not drawing us closer to Jesus, whatever it is. And if that's the case, at some point your hope is going to be deteriorated and your joy is going to be depleted. Because the presence of Jesus is the source of hope and also the source of joy. I don't know what you have invited into your home. I don't know what maybe you are inviting into your homes now, but maybe today is the day that we clean our homes, and instead of having the things in it that's not bringing us closer to Jesus, maybe today's that we clean our homes and we instead allow Jesus to be at the center of our homes, the center of our hearts. Now, let me just tell you a story. I've shared this with you before, but I remember one time, this was years ago, we were sitting out on our porch, and we had our screened-in porch, and we had one of those storms come through, and the screens, it kind of sheared the screens on one side, and we were getting them replaced, but at the time, they were kind of just blowing in the wind, and there wasn't any screen there. Well, we were sitting out there one evening, me and my daughter, Leah, we're sitting out there just after we had eaten our dinner, and we're just kind of sitting there hanging out, doing whatever, and we had the light on, and the next thing I know, I see this shadow starting to do this flyby, and what it is, it's one of those demon-possessed pterodactyls that we know as a bat. That everybody says bats won't hurt you. Everybody says bats are small and they eat mosquitoes. I don't care. They scare me to death. I will throw children and women in front of me to get away from a bat. That's how much they scare me. And people say, well, they're just very small, and statistically they won't bite you and everything. It's like, yeah, right. I don't buy the statistics because, man, when those things start to fly, they have a wingspan of like 20 feet. They're bigger than bald eagles. And so I see this thing and I start kind of doing this crouch to the sliding glass door, and I kind of push Leah out of the way, and I'm in it. I'm through that sliding glass door, and I may have closed it with her being outside. I don't know, because I didn't care. It was every man for themselves at that point. That's how much bats scare me. So Leah gets inside, and then we can see it flying around this light. So I'm like, all right. I drive to Meijer, and I buy this BB gun, this handgun, this little handgun that's a BB gun. I'm like, I'm taking the bat out. That's what I'm doing. What I really wanted to do, I wanted to go get my shotgun and really take it out, but I thought, maybe the neighbors wouldn't like that as much. Or maybe that would cost me a little bit more because we got holes in the wall, right? So I get this BB gun, and of course I get back home, and I look out, and the sliding glass door is gone. It's like, okay, where's it at? There's no way it flew back out. So we wait till in the morning, and this is right before they're going to school, and I tell the kids, I'm like, hey, I need a couple of you guys to go out there and see if you can find that bat. It's probably sleeping someplace up underneath something. So I get them out there, and they're all cautious and everything, and they're looking up under everything. They can't find it. I'm like, it's got to be out there. I know it's out there. So finally, they find it. It's curled up. It does look really small. I'll give it that. And I'm out there, and I get out there, and I go over top of that thing with this BB gun, and I'm just pelting this thing, and it's just like kind of hissing and everything, and the BBs are just popping off of it because it's an animal from hell. That's what it is. And so I'm like, well, heck with this. So I get Leah, and I don't know why. I have no clue, and I don't know why she even did it. But in my brain, I'm like, here, I want you to take these chopsticks, and I want you to go out there, and I want you to kill that bat, which she does, and that thing's hissing and everything, but give it to her, she did it. My kids are probably scarred for life. Again, bats, women and children, whatever. So But I didn't invite this thing in. But I'm going to tell you something. When it became in my home, man, it was a different story. It was a different game, right? But here's the question. What do we invite into our homes? And when we look at this story, like again, I don't know how this guy became demon-possessed, and I'm not suggesting that you're demon-possessed, but what I am suggesting is this. There are a lot of times we open up doors, we open up windows for the demonic, and I don't believe Christians can be possessed, but I do believe they can be oppressed. And so my question is, what is it that we open up and let into our homes, into our hearts? Here's the cool thing. Here's the great thing. Regardless of what it is, it doesn't make it right, not condoning it, but regardless of what it is, evil shudders in the presence of Jesus. Again, James tells us that. So we find our joy, we find not only our hope, we also find our joy in Christ because we know that there's nothing that can stand up against Christ. Paul tells us this time and time again. There's nothing that can separate us from the love of God. But Jesus demonstrates His authority, His sovereignty, His power over this evil presence. The demons even recognize it. So here's the deal. Whatever it is that we have opened up our doors to, we can trust Jesus to protect us and help clean our home, allow Him to clean our home so that we don't have this evil presence or whatever within our home that's robbing us not only of our hope, but of our joy. The second thing is this that goes along with the first one is Jesus has power over all. This man was cleansed. This man was clean. This man was in his right mind, dressed right after he met Jesus. After he encountered Jesus, he went from being completely out of control, isolated, gashing himself, cutting himself, screaming, you name it, just out of his mind. He went from all of that to being restored, healthy, experiencing incredible healing, being filled once again with hope. And let me ask you this. Are you telling me that guy was not filled with joy after he encountered Jesus? Are you telling me this guy was not just filled to the brim with joy for what Jesus had done? I think we see that here in just a few moments. Another thing we see in this story, we see this incredible love, this incredible compassion for the people who are the outliers. The people that are the outliers, they're the outcasts. They're the ones that are not in the right frame of mind, like this guy. And we could say this, they are the people that are joyless. They're not only hopeless, but they're also joyless. They have no joy. Something is in their home. Something is in their hearts. There's a presence, whether they even, however it got there, I don't know. Some of them may have invited that in. They've opened the door. They've opened a window. They've engaged in a relationship they shouldn't be in. They've placed their faith and trust into something that is an idol. Whatever it is, it's so easy to become joyless and you become this outlier. You become separated. But yet Jesus is there pursuing, regardless of what has happened, to give forgiveness, mercy, and love, and to bring joy, to instill joy back into your marginalized life. What an incredible, that's what we see within this story. Just a couple more things here. Joy is also rooted in obedience, is it not? And there's times where we have invited things into our houses, our homes, and our hearts. And let me just say what it is. It's sin, and it's a joy killer. And there's only one way that doesn't happen, and that's through obedience. And sometimes, to experience that spiritual freedom, that spiritual transformation, it's going to require us to go in a different direction. It's going to require us to give up what we think, what we've defined, that's going to bring us happiness and possibly joy and contentment and fulfillment. Because that's not what it's doing. It's doing the complete opposite. But joy is rooted in obedience. That's when we experience joy. That's when we go against the status quo, when we go against our culture, when we go against self at times because we know what we're doing is not right. We know what we're doing is sin. We know what we're doing is inviting something into our homes, into our hearts, into our houses that is not right. And because of that, we're literally sabotaging what we truly want because we are not going to experience joy or hope. We're going to experience the complete opposite. We're being duped. We're being, so obedience can can challenge the very things that we ourselves, our humanness wants. But knowing that what we really want is joy and hope, and we're going to experience those through loving obedience with Jesus. We did a series on this not too long ago, and we looked at obedience, and instead of looking at it as a negative connotation, we looked at it as a positive connotation, where God's not some killjoy, but instead He's the opposite. He's saying, I know what you want. I know that you want life, you want fulfillment, you want hope, you want joy, but where you're looking for it is in the wrong place. You're being disobedient in the sense that you're pursuing it on your own terms. And joy and hope is rooted in obedience. And sin is a killer of hope and joy. Last, we share our life story just like this guy did. He begged to go with Jesus. Now, I don't know if he begged to just stay in the presence of Jesus, because I can only imagine as he comes to his right mind that it's like, hey, I want to be around this guy all the time. He encountered Jesus. He encountered Him in such a powerful way. Jesus literally turned this guy's life upside down. Upside down. And that's how Jesus, then we share our life story. That's what this guy was all about then. About how Jesus had changed him. How joy had been restored. Again, this guy was delivered, but Jesus said, no, I don't want you to, I need you to stay here, and I need you to go back into your hometown and share what God has done. Share about the mercy. Talk about the mercy. Share your story about how God has granted you mercy and grace and love and forgiveness and has instilled hope into you once again and joy into you once again. Think about this for a second. Can you imagine this guy? I was talking to my dad, and he said he spoke on this, taught on this one time, and his creative mind too was just kind of going in different directions. And he said, you know what would it have been like, and who knows, this guy going back into town, people not knowing yet that he's been restored, although he looks different. But what if he would have approached his home and his kids were looking out the window, his kids saying, whoa, hang on a second, man, shut the doors, lock the doors, because that crazy dad of ours is back. Could you imagine how his heart would have been so broken? But yet, once they saw how he had been changed by Jesus, how his life would have just been absolutely restored. Can you imagine that? And now he gets to share the story how he encountered Jesus. How he gets to share the story of where he was at and what Jesus has done. By the way, that's what we call being an ambassador of Jesus. That's what we call evangelizing. That's what we call witnessing. It's not trying to convince people. God's not asking us to be a lawyer. He's not asking us to persuade people into heaven, because that's not our job anyhow. Only He can draw people. But what He's asking us to do is simply share our story just like this, our life story. Because no one can argue with how Jesus has changed you. Who's going to argue with this guy and say, nuh-uh, that's not what happened. I don't believe you. And it's just like, well, it's like the other guy. Remember when Jesus healed his sight, and the Pharisees, the leaders brought Him in, and they were questioning Him, and they're like, what happened? And then they bring his parents in, and then they bring this guy back in once again. And you know what the guy, I think it's in John chapter 4, you know what the guy says? He says, I can't answer all your questions. I don't have the answer to all your questions, but the one thing I do know, I was blind and now I can see. That's what the one guy, he was talking about his life story. He was talking about how he encountered Jesus. And that's what this guy was doing now too. Going and sharing with people how he encountered Jesus and what Jesus, God, had done for his life. The mercy, the forgiveness, the grace, the love, the hope, the joy that now has been restored within this guy. Again, we come back to Christmas, we come back to Advent. How are we talking about a guy that was demon-possessed around Christmas? Well, we're looking at this through the eyes of people that have encountered God, Jesus, in a very, very powerful way. And I can't, I'm sure we can think of others. We're going to have some other characters that are kind of off the wall too, talking about peace and love. But I want to tell you something. I can't imagine a guy that experienced incredible, overwhelming, indescribable joy after he encountered Jesus. God with us, Emmanuel. That's what we're celebrating and worshiping this Christmas. How Jesus restores it all, and how all of this is embodied in Jesus. It's in a person, it's in a relationship. It's encountering Jesus that we have this incredible amounts of hope now. We're not hopeless anymore. And this incredible amount of indescribable joy. And we often sing about that at Christmas time. Indescribable joy. I hope that's what you've experienced. And I pray, and I want to be very clear, I pray that if you've invited things into your home that doesn't belong there, I pray today might be the day you identify those things and you and Jesus begin to clean out your home and not leave your home empty, but you fill your home with Jesus. And you allow Jesus to be the leader of your heart. And whatever it is that the Holy Spirit is pressing upon your spirit right now, I pray that you would just turn that over to Jesus and give it to Him. Clean out your home, clean out your hearts, and experience the incredible hope and joy that comes from encountering Jesus in such an intimate way. I hope you're having a great Christmas. I hope you stick with this series as we continue to look at some individuals that have encountered Jesus, and we're going to look at that through their eyes. Their eyes. Have a great week.
That we called sin and shame, they were like prisons that we couldn't escape. But He came and He died and He rose. Those walls are rubble now. Remember those giants we called death and grave. They were like mountains that stood in our way. But He came and He died and He rose. Those giants are dead now. This is our God, this is who He is. He loves us. This is our God, this is what He does. He saves us. He bore the cross, the grave, let heaven and earth proclaim. This is our God, King Jesus. Remember that fear that took our breath away, faith so weak that